Have you ever wondered what secrets ancient treasures could reveal if they could speak? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, where we uncover hidden stories from history. Today we'll explore 6 incredible artifacts with mysteries that survived millennia. Please subscribe, like the video, and share where you're watching from. The La Tolita figurines. Hidden beneath the mists of Ecuador's northern coast, where the humid breath of the Pacific presses against mangrove and jungle, lies the ancient island of La Tolita. Centuries before European sails crossed these waters, the people who lived here shaped a world of astonishing craftsmanship, a civilization that glittered quietly beneath the canopy. What they left behind would shimmer through the centuries, tiny golden faces, cast with impossible delicacy, their expressions eerily alive even now. The La Tolita culture thrived between 600 BCE and 400 CE, along the stretch of land where the rivers Mira and Santiago met the sea. In those days, the coastline was a maze of marsh and rainforest, and life revolved around the tides and the earth. The people were skilled metalworkers, among the very first in the Americas to perfect the art of alloying gold and platinum, a process that would remain unmatched for 1,000 years. Their workshops hummed not with words but with the soft rhythm of hammer and flame, as gold dust and clay molds gave birth to forms that seemed to breathe. Each figurine was more than ornament. They were the embodiment of myth, identity, and the invisible world that surrounded them. Some depict warriors with headdresses rising like flames from their heads, others delicate priestesses or figures in trance-like stillness. Many show deformities, elongated skulls, twisted limbs, faces with missing eyes or exaggerated jaws. To the modern gaze, they might seem grotesque or symbolic, but to the La Tolita people, such depictions likely held sacred power. They may have represented the spiritual transformation between human and divine, or honored those born different as bridges between worlds. The goldsmiths of La Tolita were alchemists of their age. They mixed pure gold with platinum dust, an almost impossible task without modern furnaces. And yet they achieved it with ingenuity, by using blowpipes to raise temperatures high enough to fuse metals together, by embedding the mixture in charcoal crucibles, and by coaxing the fire like something living. Through this mastery they made amulets, masks, earrings, and figurines that captured the faces of their gods, their rulers, and perhaps even themselves. One figurine, no larger than a thumb, shows a figure wearing an elaborate helmet, arms folded, mouth slightly open, as if whispering. Another bears the features of a man mid-transformation, one half human, the other animal, its teeth curling into fangs. These weren't decorations for idle beauty. They were offerings, placed into tombs, temples, and ceremonial platforms, left to speak for those who could no longer speak for themselves. When archaeologists first unearthed them, buried beneath thick layers of mud and mangrove root, they were astonished. The metal still gleamed after more than 1,000 years. The details, eyelids, pupils, fingernails, even woven textile patterns, had survived the humidity and time. But what startled scholars most wasn't just the skill, it was the emotion. These tiny figures carried expressions that seemed aware, solemn, even mournful, as if they had watched their own makers vanish into the jungle's silence. La Tolita's artistry wasn't confined to metal. They worked in clay and stone, carving jaguars and serpents, gods with fanged smiles and swirling hair. The same faces reappeared in gold, repeated across centuries, implying a continuity of faith and ritual. Their temples, though long since devoured by vegetation, once rose from earthen mounds aligned to the stars. Each ceremonial platform held meaning. Each figurine buried beneath it was a promise that life and death were not opposites, but a cycle. The island itself became a sacred geography. The rivers that surrounded it reflected the Milky Way, and shamans believed that souls followed those waters after death. Gold, for them, was not wealth, but sunlight captured in metal, a bridge to the divine. When the first rays of dawn struck the figurines laid upon temple altars, the faces shone as though alive again. The people would chant softly, calling the spirits of ancestors to dwell within the gold. But the La Tolita world eventually faded. Environmental change, shifting rivers, perhaps even internal conflict. Whatever the cause, their settlements dissolved into the wet green quiet. The jungle reclaimed their temples, the mangroves crept over the platforms, and the gold figurines sank slowly into the earth. For over 1,000 years they slept. When Spanish explorers arrived in the 16th century, they heard whispers of lost gold in the north, stories of figures with shining faces found by fishermen in the mud. Few believed them. Only in the 20th century did archaeologists begin to uncover the truth. Thousands of pieces emerged, tiny masks, nose rings, pendants, ceremonial tools, and figures both human and animal. Together they told the story of a people whose spiritual and artistic world was far more complex than history had ever credited. The figurines defied the colonial assumption that metallurgy was imported to the Americas. La Tolita proved that the knowledge had evolved independently, that these artisans had mastered the fusion of gold and platinum centuries before any European had. Even now, scientists study the exact method they used, unable to fully replicate the same results without industrial tools. It remains one of archaeology's quieter mysteries, how such precision could arise in the humidity of an equatorial rainforest, using only handmade furnaces and ancient intuition. And beyond the technical wonder, there lingers something else, the human presence. To hold a La Tolita figurine today, if one could, would be to feel the ghost of touch. The thumbprint of the craftsman still sometimes lingers on the reverse of the gold. You can imagine him crouched before the fire, smoke rising through the trees, working late into the night as frogs and cicadas hummed outside. Each hammer strike would have been deliberate, a rhythm learned from the pulse of his own heart. Each figure a prayer in metal. Some scholars believe the figurines represented social status, tokens of elite power, worn by rulers or priests. Others argue they symbolized a more collective spirituality, a belief that all beings were connected through transformation. The prevalence of hybrid figures, half man, half jaguar, suggests an ideology where boundaries between species and worlds were fluid. To become divine was to cross those boundaries, to shed the purely human form. The figurines may have been invitations to that crossing. Among the most haunting pieces ever found is a small mask of hammered gold, its face serene yet strangely weary. The eyes are slanted upward, the mouth drawn tight. Around the edges are punctured holes, perhaps once used to tie it to a body or a shroud. It may have been a funerary piece, placed over the face of a deceased noble. When light hits it, the mask almost seems to move. In the flicker of a torch, it blinks. In the museums of Quito and Bogotá, these figures now rest behind glass, their golden sheen dimmed by artificial light. But their presence remains heavy, as though the air itself remembers the rituals once performed in their honor. Visitors often remark on how human they feel, how despite their size, they seem to hold the weight of an entire vanished world. Outside those walls, the mangroves of La Tolita still stand, tangled and dense. Beneath their roots, archaeologists suspect thousands more artifacts remain buried, unseen, unexcavated, protected by the same mud that once swallowed them. The sea occasionally washes fragments ashore, a shard of gold, a broken ear ornament, the corner of a miniature face. Locals still find them after storms, shimmering faintly among the debris. They call them caras del sol, faces of the sun, because even now, 2 millennia later, the gold of La Tolita continues to glow with a quiet, impossible warmth, as if it remembers every dawn it ever reflected. And perhaps, in that shimmering silence, the old island still whispers through its figurines that nothing made with such devotion is ever truly lost. The Luristan bronzes. High in the mountains of western Iran, where the Zagros rise like jagged teeth into the sky, there lies a land of mist and stone, of narrow valleys hidden behind steep cliffs. This is Luristan, a region that has cradled human life for thousands of years, where rivers carve their way through rock and small villages cling to the slopes as if afraid to fall. The air here carries a weight, the quiet pressure of centuries pressing down, and in that quiet, history sleeps, waiting for those patient enough to uncover it. Long before the modern borders, long before the rise of empires, the people of Luristan lived in these valleys and passes, their lives intimately bound to the rugged terrain. They were warriors and herders, craftspeople and shamans, people whose hands shaped not only the tools of survival but the objects of imagination and power. From this land came the Luristan bronzes, small, enigmatic artifacts that whisper across time, carrying stories of ritual, warfare, belief, and identity. Archaeologists first began to encounter these bronzes in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They were found in burial mounds, or tells, often in clusters with iron weapons, ceramics, and the bones of those who had long since passed into dust. The bronzes were sometimes concealed in mud brick tombs, sometimes scattered along riverbeds, their surfaces dulled by centuries of oxidation. But beneath the green patina, the intricate craftsmanship revealed a civilization of extraordinary skill. The Luristan bronzes are small in size, often no taller than a hand, yet in their detail they carry a majesty that belies their scale. They include weapons, swords, daggers, spearheads, and axes, decorated with swirling animal motifs, figures of goats, horses, lions, and fantastical hybrids. Many feature geometric patterns, symmetrical curves, and precise inlays that suggest not only technical mastery but a deep symbolic language. It is impossible to look upon one of these objects without feeling the pulse of the people who made it, their fingers tracing the same lines centuries before our own. Some of the most remarkable bronzes are the small human and animal figures. They are often stylized rather than realistic, their limbs exaggerated, heads elongated, or faces simplified into abstract forms. These figures were not toys or casual ornaments, they were sacred. Many were likely associated with funerary practices, placed in tombs to accompany the dead into the afterlife, serving as guardians or companions in the journey beyond. Others may have been ritual objects used by shamans or tribal leaders during ceremonies, their forms invoking strength, protection, and divine favor. The motifs on Luristan bronzes are a language of their own. Horses are depicted with arched necks, raised tails, and flaring nostrils, as if frozen mid-gallop, embodying both speed and vitality. Goats and deer, common in the Zagros region, appear with elaborate spiral horns or decorative harnesses, suggesting that these animals were not only sustenance, but symbols of status and spirituality. Occasionally figures merge human and animal elements, a man with a lion's head, a bird perched atop a human shoulder, creating creatures that exist between worlds, between the natural and the supernatural. The process of creating these bronzes was painstaking. Artisans began with copper and tin, carefully alloying them to form bronze, and then poured the molten metal into molds. These molds were made from clay, often carved in relief, so that when the bronze hardened and the clay was removed, intricate details remained intact. Some bronzes show evidence of hammering after casting, a technique called cold working, used to refine shapes, add texture, and sharpen features. In some cases, gold or silver inlay was added to highlight eyes, hooves, or manes, giving the object a shimmer that would have caught the light in dim tombs or ritual spaces. Imagine one of these bronze figures lying in a tomb centuries ago, surrounded by the quiet of the earth, the weight of stone above, and the lingering scent of incense or resin. Perhaps it represented a warrior who had died young, or a chieftain whose life had been intertwined with the seasonal rhythms of the mountains. Perhaps it was meant to protect a family, a community, or even the tomb itself from spirits or enemies. Whatever its purpose, the figure would have carried intention, care, and meaning, a bridge between the living and the dead, the human and the divine. Many bronzes were discovered in what modern archaeologists classify as Luristan hoards, collections buried in mounds that may have served as both offerings and repositories of wealth. These hoards contain weapons, tools, and ritual objects together, suggesting that the people of Luristan did not view value merely as material, but as relational and symbolic. A spearhead, intricately decorated with geometric patterns or animal motifs, was both a weapon and a talisman, capable of defending the body and warding off spiritual harm. A small figure of a goat could signify fertility, prosperity, or the favor of the gods. The art of Luristan was profoundly connected to the environment. The mountains dictated not only the lifestyle of the people, their herding, hunting, and seasonal movements, but also the materials available to them. Copper veins ran through the rocks, tin could be procured from distant trade networks, and wood and leather were abundant for molds, handles, and ritual paraphernalia. Each bronze carries the geography of its creation within it, a subtle echo of the rivers, valleys, and cliffs that shaped the hands that made it. Despite their small size, the bronzes often portray scenes of movement and narrative. A horse and rider may appear on a dagger hilt, suggesting a tale of hunting, conquest, or ceremony. Figures of humans with raised arms might represent dancers, warriors, or supplicants, their gestures frozen in bronze but alive with intention. These motifs hint at a culture that was rich in storytelling, performance, and ritual, a world in which the boundaries between the tangible and the spiritual were porous, and where objects themselves could embody story, status, and belief. One of the enduring mysteries of Luristan bronzes is their use in everyday life versus ritual. Some objects, particularly weapons, were undoubtedly practical: swords, axes, and spearheads designed to be wielded in defense or hunting. Yet their decoration suggests a dual purpose, that even in acts of survival, aesthetic and symbolic meaning mattered. Bronze knife handles, for example, might show a series of tiny animals in relief, their presence not merely decorative, but intended to invoke protection, luck, or divine favor. The Luristan people, it seems, could not separate the practical from the sacred. Every crafted object carried both function and spirit. Another striking feature is the uniformity and recurrence of certain motifs across centuries. Horses, rams, lions, and hybrid creatures appear repeatedly, suggesting a visual language passed down through generations. This continuity indicates that Luristan was not a static culture but one with memory, a society conscious of its past, its myths, and its symbols, using bronze as a medium to preserve and transmit identity. Each new generation of artisans inherited techniques, patterns, and meanings, refining them while maintaining their ancestral significance. The discovery of these bronzes in the 20th century reshaped understanding of ancient Iran. Previously, scholars underestimated the complexity of societies in the Zagros region during the early 1st millennium BCE. The intricacy, skill, and symbolism of Luristan bronzes demonstrated that these communities were not peripheral, they were centers of innovation, ritual, and artistry. Their metalwork rivals the sophistication of contemporary civilizations across the Near East, suggesting that Luristan played a crucial role in regional networks of trade, warfare, and cultural exchange. Consider a small bronze horse, no larger than a fist, its legs poised as if galloping, its mane rendered in curling waves. The figure might have been buried with a child, a warrior, or a leader, intended to accompany them in death. Its form communicates energy, motion, and presence, bridging centuries to reach the observer. Holding such an object, one can almost hear the clatter of hooves, the whisper of the wind along the Zagros ridges, and the quiet murmur of a people who spoke through metal rather than parchment. Some bronzes also reflect influence from neighboring regions, including Mesopotamia, the Iranian plateau, and Anatolia. The motifs of lions, deer, and hybrid creatures echo wider mythologies. Yet the Luristan style remains unique, abstracted, dynamic, and intensely expressive. This synthesis of local and external influence underscores a culture both connected and distinct, aware of the wider world while firmly rooted in its rugged valleys. The bronzes were sometimes mounted on handles, belts, and horse gear, adding layers of practicality and prestige. A decorated horsebit or chariot fitting conveyed not only status but also a narrative, a story of ownership, skill, and divine favor. Many of the motifs on these pieces reflect power and protection, signaling that their bearers were not merely surviving, but claiming presence and identity in a world where strength, ritual, and ancestry intertwined. Imagine the process of burial. A tomb is dug in the slope of a mountainside, lined with timber, perhaps scented with incense. The body is laid with its belongings, the spear with a coiled serpent embossed along its blade, a dagger with a prancing goat on its handle, a small bronze human figure seated in meditation. Every object is positioned with intention, every curve and figure chosen to protect, honor, and guide the deceased. Outside, the wind whistles through the crags, carrying the faint scent of the valleys below, and the river murmurs softly against the stones. Over time, the earth covers the tomb, leaves settle, and centuries pass. The bronzes lie in silence, waiting to be discovered. The first modern excavations revealed not only the skill of the Luristan artisans but also hints of their worldview. Hybrid animals, dancing figures, and weapon motifs suggest a belief system that combined the spiritual and the martial, the natural and the supernatural. The recurrence of certain animal forms implies symbolic associations: goats for fertility and agility, lions for strength and dominance, horses for movement and status. Even today, the precise meaning of these images is debated, yet their presence speaks to a people who understood the power of imagery, narrative, and materiality. Some of the most captivating objects are the small figures of humans in stylized poses, arms raised, knees bent, bodies elongated. They seem to dance or perform ritual gestures. These gestures, frozen in bronze, invite speculation. Were they prayers, representations of mythic heroes, or meditations on mortality and transformation? Perhaps all of these. The Luristan bronzes capture not just forms, but intentions, bridging a gap between centuries, cultures, and human experience. Even the smallest items, a bronze pendant shaped like a ram's head, a tiny chariot fitting, a bracelet inlaid with geometric designs, carry immense presence. They communicate the tactile intimacy of the past, the curve of a finger along a horn, the balance of weight in the palm, the cool, enduring sensation of metal worked by hands that are long gone. Each object, no matter how small, is a conduit, a connection to the people who created it, and to the landscape that nurtured their lives. In the valleys of Luristan, life would have been shaped by season and survival, herding goats and sheep, hunting deer and smaller game, collecting and smelting ores, traveling along treacherous mountain passes. These daily acts were infused with meaning. Every weapon, every ornament, every bronze figure was part of that interplay between human labor, environment, and spiritual aspiration. The bronzes are echoes of these acts, crystallized in metal, enduring far beyond the lifetime of any one person. The Luristan bronzes also raise questions that remain unsolved. Why were they often buried in hoards? What rituals dictated the choice of motifs and placement? Were the hybrid figures representations of deities, ancestral spirits, or shamanic visions? Archaeology can offer clues through context, metallurgy, and comparison, but some answers may be forever beyond reach, leaving only the objects themselves as witnesses to a vanished world. And yet, despite the unanswered questions, the bronzes speak. They speak of care, intention, and artistry. They speak of a people who sought to preserve meaning across generations, who understood that objects could carry identity, memory. Each curve, each spiral, each hammered line is a whisper from the past, a reminder that even in a land of stone, metal can hold warmth, expression, and life. As the mountains rise and fall, as rivers cut their courses through valleys, the Luristan bronzes remain. Some rest in museum cases, protected and studied. Others may still lie beneath the earth, waiting for discovery, awaiting the gentle hands of those who will recognize them not as relics but as companions from a time long gone. And in each, the breath of the past endures, the touch of the artisan, the vigilance of the warrior, the devotion of a community that understood the sacred power of bronze. In that quiet, across millennia, the figures remain, small, strong, enduring, and impossibly alive. They do not speak in words, but in presence. And if one listens closely, one might hear the faint echo of hammers in the workshop, of rivers through the valleys, of ceremonies long since ended, carried softly through the metal that time cannot entirely silence. After centuries of silence, the bronzes of Luristan continue to reveal secrets, their green patina softening the sharpness of their edges, their tiny figures frozen in gestures that once carried meaning. The mountains remain, unchanged, a silent audience to the centuries of human life that have passed through their valleys. And within the earth, beneath mounds of soil and rock, more bronzes rest, waiting, their forms intact, their messages muted, but persistent. In Part 1, we explored the artistry, ritual, and landscape that shaped these objects. Now we turn to the more intimate stories they tell, the lives of the people who held them, the ceremonies in which they were central, and the subtle ways these bronzes reflect identity, power, and the rhythms of daily existence. The Luristan people lived in close-knit communities along river valleys, herding goats and sheep, hunting, crafting, and trading with neighbors. Their survival depended on skill, cooperation, and an understanding of the land. Each bronze, whether a dagger, a chariot fitting, or a tiny figure, was a reflection of this intertwined existence. A horse motif on a spearhead was more than decoration, it symbolized mobility, wealth, and status. A goat figurine may have invoked fertility, a bountiful herd, or the favor of spirits protecting the community. Among the most captivating artifacts are the hybrid creatures, men with animal heads, lions with wings, birds perched atop human shoulders. These figures capture the imagination, suggesting a worldview in which the boundary between human, animal, and divine was fluid. Perhaps shamans wore or carried such figures during rituals, allowing them to embody the traits of the animals, strength, speed, agility, or wisdom. Perhaps warriors carried them into battle, invoking the protection or ferocity of the depicted beasts. Each figure represents a bridge between worlds, the tangible human realm and the unseen forces that governed life, death, and destiny. Burial practices illuminate another layer of meaning. When a bronze weapon or figure was placed in a tomb, it was never random, the positioning mattered. Beside a deceased warrior, a chieftain, or a child, each object was intended to accompany the soul on its journey. The gestures of the human figures, the motion of the animals, even the curvature of a blade, all contributed to a carefully curated message: strength, protection, guidance, or remembrance. For centuries, these items lay undisturbed, witnessing the slow passage of time, until modern hands uncovered them. Even the smallest details speak volumes. Hammer marks, faint tool impressions, and subtle asymmetries suggest that each piece was handmade, not mass-produced. They were personal. The artisan's touch endures, connecting us across millennia to a mind and hand that worked patiently, deliberately, with both practical and spiritual intent. These artifacts were vessels of thought, devotion, and human creativity. Trade and contact also left traces in the bronzes. Some motifs echo those found in Mesopotamia or Anatolia. Yet the Luristan style remains unmistakably local. Spirals, geometric patterns, and dynamic animal forms reflect both adaptation and innovation. This dialogue between cultures indicates a network of exchange, not just of goods, but of ideas, stories, and beliefs. Through bronze, the mountains of Luristan became part of a wider human story, linking distant communities through shared symbols and craft. One cannot overlook the sheer presence of these bronzes. Even after millennia buried in earth or exposed to the elements, their forms radiate energy. A bronze horse rearing, a man with raised arms, a dagger decorated with a prancing goat, each object seems to carry the weight of its own history. Holding one would be to feel a connection to a vanished people, to touch the rhythm of their lives, and to sense the quiet persistence of their beliefs. The Luristan bronzes also hint at hierarchy and power. Elaborate chariot fittings, horse bridles, and weaponry indicate that certain individuals held status, not just through wealth but through ritual authority, skill, or lineage. Yet these objects also suggest community and shared identity. Common motifs recur across centuries and villages, implying a continuity of belief and practice that bound people together, even as individuals rose and fell. Beyond the practical and symbolic, there is artistry. These bronzes are visually striking, capturing motion and emotion in miniature. The curvature of a horse's neck, the tilt of a human head, the sweep of an animal's tail, all convey a liveliness that transcends time. They remind us that these were not merely tools or objects, they were carriers of imagination, expressions of worldview, and manifestations of human creativity and devotion. Even as museums now hold many Luristan bronzes behind glass, their essence remains. Visitors can study them, photograph them, catalog them, and admire their craftsmanship, but the objects retain a quiet, almost living presence. They remind us that ancient societies were not distant abstractions, but real people with hopes, fears, and skill, who left traces of themselves in the simplest and most profound of forms, small objects forged in metal, designed to endure. And while much has been learned, mysteries remain. How precisely were some alloys achieved? What exactly did certain hybrid motifs signify? Which objects were intended for ritual versus practical use? Each unanswered question adds depth, suggesting that the Luristan bronzes are not merely artifacts but invitations to wonder, to imagine, and to listen to a world long gone but still whispering through metal. In the valleys of Luristan, the mountains remain, silent and enduring, carrying stories in the stones, rivers, and soil. The bronzes lie beneath or within museums, but their voices continue to echo softly. They speak of human ingenuity, belief, ritual, and the subtle understanding of connection between humans, animals, gods, and the natural world. Each curve and line tells a story, and in their quiet persistence, they remind us that what is made with intention and care can endure across centuries, speaking to the living long after the maker is gone. Even now, when one studies a Luristan dagger, a horse figurine, or a tiny human form, it is possible to feel the pulse of a vanished civilization. The hammer strikes, the pouring of molten bronze, the careful carving of details, the placement of objects in tombs, all these actions resonate through the centuries, and in the silent reflection of their forms, one finds a connection to people who once lived, loved, fought, and believed in ways both familiar and alien. The mountains, the rivers, the winds through the valleys, all seem to guard these objects, keeping their stories alive. And as the bronzes continue to be studied, catalogued, and displayed, they remind us that the past is never entirely gone. It persists in form, in touch, and in the quiet whisper of metal against air, waiting for those willing to listen. Even as modern life rushes past, these objects hold a stillness, a patience, a reminder that time is not only linear but cyclical, that human creativity can endure, and that the hands of ancient artisans can reach across millennia to touch the present. And so the Luristan bronzes, small and enduring, continue their quiet vigil. They are more than weapons, more than ritual figures. They are echoes of lives once lived, of minds and hearts long vanished, of a culture that understood that even the smallest object could carry significance, intention, and the whisper of eternity. The Copan altar Q. Seated in the lush valleys of western Honduras, where the Motagua River winds through steep hills and dense jungle, lies the ancient city of Copan. Today, vines and orchids cling to crumbling stone, and the calls of howler monkeys echo across the terraces, carrying a rhythm that has persisted for centuries. Long before modern settlements or the hum of highways, Copan was alive with the pulse of the Maya, a civilization of mathematicians, astronomers, architects, and artists. And at its heart lies one of the most remarkable artifacts of the ancient world, Altar Q. Altar Q is a massive stone monument, square and imposing, carved from a single block of limestone. Its surface is alive with images, inscriptions, and the faces of 20 rulers, each one seated upon a throne. The altar functions as both history and art, a stone tapestry capturing the succession of Copan's kings across generations. To stand before it is to be drawn into a civilization that measured time with precision, that mapped the heavens, that recorded its past, not in paper or clay, but in stone meant to endure millennia. The story begins over 1,000 years ago. Copan, founded in the early classic period of the Maya civilization, grew from a modest settlement into a city of ceremonial plazas, pyramids, ball courts, and temples. The rulers of Copan were more than political leaders. They were the earthly representatives of the gods, mediators between human society and the celestial order. Their power was intertwined with ritual, astronomical observation, and artistic expression, and it is these rulers who are immortalized on Altar Q, carved in the late 8th century CE during the reign of King Yaks Pasaj Chanyopat. Altar Q stands as both a chronicle and a legitimizing instrument. It depicts the city's 20 rulers in a continuous lineage, beginning with Yaks Kukmo, the founder of the dynasty, and extending to Yaks Pasaj himself. Each figure is seated on a throne, holding the ceremonial scepter of power, wearing elaborate headdresses, and adorned with jewelry that signals status, lineage, and divine favor. The detail in each carving is extraordinary. Individual facial features, elaborate hairstyles, and the folds of garments are all rendered with astonishing precision. The symbolism of Altar Q is multi-layered. It is a political statement, affirming the legitimacy of Yaxpasage's rule by visually connecting him to his predecessors. It is also a spiritual narrative, reminding viewers that the authority of the kings was derived from cosmic order, that the succession of rulers mirrored the cycles of the heavens, and that the city's fate was inseparable from the gods. The Maya believed that time itself was cyclical, that the rise and fall of kings, the passing of days and seasons, and the movements of planets and stars were intertwined. Altar Q embodies that worldview. Each ruler is not only an individual, but a link in a chain that sustains cosmic balance. The artistry of Altar Q reflects the sophistication of Maya stoneworking. Artisans used tools of harder stone to carve the softer limestone, patiently chipping away at the surface to create reliefs that are both deep and intricate. Lines are crisp, gestures deliberate, and the composition conveys both order and movement. The thrones form a grid, yet each ruler is unique, suggesting not only mastery of technique, but a keen understanding of portraiture, hierarchy, and narrative. Scholars believe that the arrangement of figures, the positioning of hands, the direction of gaze, the alignment of thrones was carefully planned to convey political and spiritual meaning, a visual grammar of power. Beyond the faces of kings, Altar Q is rich in glyphs, Mayan hieroglyphs that tell the names, dates, and achievements of each ruler. The inscriptions serve as both record and ritual. They are not merely descriptive, but performative, speaking the history into existence and ensuring that the deeds of the rulers are remembered. The Maya believed that words carved in stone carried enduring power, that names and deeds preserved in this form could transcend death, linking the living city with its ancestors. Consider the figure of Yaxkukmo, the founder of the dynasty. He is seated, scepter in hand, with an expression both solemn and alert. Around him, glyphs record his rise to power, the conquests and alliances that established Copan as a city of influence. To a contemporary observer, the image is striking not just for its craftsmanship, but for the sense of presence it conveys. Yaxkukmo is more than a carved figure. He is a projection of authority, a reminder that the city's legitimacy originates in him and flows forward through each successor. Altar Q also communicates through subtle visual cues. The size of each figure, the placement of feet and hands, and the orientation of gaze all carry meaning. Some rulers face forward, confronting the viewer with authority. Others are slightly angled, perhaps indicating humility or deference to predecessors. The scepters and headdresses are rich in symbolism. Serpents, jaguars, and quetzals appear frequently, each representing aspects of power, protection, and divine sanction. Even the spacing between figures is intentional, creating a rhythm that guides the eye and reinforces the narrative of succession. The creation of Altar Q was an enormous undertaking. Quarrying the limestone, transporting it across the plaza, and carving the reliefs would have required coordinated labor, specialized skill, and time measured in months, if not years. This effort itself reflects the organization and resources of Copan, a city capable of mobilizing artisans, laborers, and priests to produce a monument that would endure for centuries. It is both a feat of engineering and an act of devotion, a testament to the city's values and priorities. Archaeological studies suggest that Altar Q was placed in a central plaza, likely near the main temple and ceremonial court, so that it would be seen during public rituals, feasts, and political gatherings. Its presence asserted the authority of the rulers while reinforcing the cultural memory of the dynasty. The Maya understood the importance of visibility. Monuments like Altar Q functioned as anchors of memory and instruments of social cohesion, shaping perception as much as recording history. The imagery on Altar Q also hints at the relationship between Copan and neighboring cities. Certain symbols and motifs show influence from Teotihuacan and other Maya centers, suggesting contact, trade, or political alliances. Yet the style remains uniquely Copan, dynamic, expressive, and intricately detailed. The combination of external influence and local innovation illustrates the city's position within the broader Maya world, connected, aware, yet proud of its own identity. The ritual function of Altar Q cannot be overstated. Maya kings were seen as intermediaries between humans and gods. Their actions ensured the prosperity of the city, the fertility of the land, and the favor of the heavens. By depicting the lineage of rulers in stone, Altar Q reinforced the sacred nature of kingship. Each public ritual, each offering or ceremony would have been framed by the presence of the altar, reminding participants that authority was sanctioned by ancestors and the divine. The stone faces watched, silently affirming the cosmic order. Even in decay, Altar Q maintains its presence. Centuries of exposure to rain, sun, and the growth of jungle have weathered the stone, yet the carvings remain legible, the faces still recognizable. In some places, moss and lichen cling to the reliefs, softening their lines and adding a green patina that merges human art with the natural world. Standing before it, one can almost sense the centuries of observation, the eyes of priests, visitors, and rulers themselves, all drawn to the altar in acknowledgement of its authority. Altar Q also invites contemplation of time and memory. The succession of rulers, the detailed recording of events, and the careful arrangement of figures illustrate a culture acutely aware of history. For the Maya, remembering was a form of power, to forget was to risk chaos, to remember was to sustain order. The altar is thus both a record and a tool, a monument that bridges past, present, and future, ensuring that the lessons, achievements, and legitimacy of rulers endure. Even for modern observers, Altar Q evokes a sense of wonder. Scholars can interpret glyphs, identify rulers, and reconstruct chronology, yet the emotional and aesthetic impact remains immediate and profound. The eyes of the carved figures seem to follow the viewer, their expressions conveying authority, calm, or contemplation. The rhythm of thrones and figures creates a visual flow that is both structured and alive, guiding attention while inviting reflection. In the centuries since its creation, Altar Q has survived political upheaval, environmental change, and neglect. When European explorers arrived in Central America, they found cities like Copan, overgrown and largely abandoned, monuments buried beneath centuries of vegetation and soil. Only in the 19th and 20th centuries did archaeologists systematically study these sites, uncovering the wealth of Copan's architecture, inscriptions, and art. Altar Q emerged as a centerpiece of understanding, a lens through which the succession, ritual, and governance of Copan could be observed in astonishing clarity. The altar also provides insight into Maya cosmology. The lineage of rulers depicted is not arbitrary. It is a reflection of the Maya belief in cyclical time, the interplay of human and divine, and the eternal continuity of life and authority. Each ruler's image is a node in a network of power that extends beyond mortality, connecting generations across the centuries. The act of carving this lineage in stone was both artistic and spiritual, a declaration that human effort, memory, and devotion could endure beyond the limits of life itself. Even the placement of glyphs on Altar Q reflects careful thought. Names, dates, and achievements are positioned to correspond with the figures they describe, creating a seamless integration of image and text. The carvings are not merely decorative, they are communicative, a sophisticated system in which visual and linguistic information merge. The observer is guided along a narrative path, experiencing the history of Copan in stone as if reading a living manuscript. The altar also invites reflection on the relationship between mortality and legacy. Each ruler depicted eventually passed away, yet their presence remains in enduring stone. In this way, Altar Q embodies the human desire to be remembered, to assert influence beyond one's lifetime, and to connect the present with the past. The monument transforms the fleeting into the eternal, using stone as both medium and message. In considering Altar Q today, one cannot separate it from the environment of Copan itself. The terraces, pyramids, plazas, and temples all create a setting in which the altar functioned as both landmark and ritual focus. The Motagua River, the surrounding forests, and the mountains themselves framed the city, linking the human, natural, and divine. Altar Q was not isolated, it was a part of a living landscape, a point of convergence for politics, spirituality, art, and daily life. Finally, the Copan Altar Q endures as a bridge across time. From the hands of ancient Maya artisans to the eyes of modern scholars and visitors, it communicates power, devotion, artistry, and memory. It reminds us that human creativity and the desire to preserve meaning are universal impulses, transcending time, geography, and culture. To stand before it, even in imagination, is to touch the heartbeat of Copan, to feel the weight of centuries, and to witness the enduring presence of those who shaped, ruled, and worshipped within the valleys of western Honduras. In its silent grandeur, Altar Q continues to speak. It speaks not in the words of any one person, but in the cumulative voice of a civilization that valued memory, lineage, and connection. Each carved face, each glyph, each throne is a testament to human aspiration, skill, and devotion. Even now, as modern life flows around it, the altar remains, a quiet witness to the continuity of time, the persistence of memory, and the enduring power of art to preserve both history and spirit. And in that presence, one can imagine the city of Copan as it once was, the bustle of plazas, the rhythm of ritual, the murmur of priests, the gestures of rulers, and the quiet gaze of ancestors carved in stone, all converging in a monument that continues to hold the stories of a civilization alive across the centuries. The Uruk vase. In the heart of southern Mesopotamia, in the land between the Tigris and Euphrates, lies a place of timeless fascination, Uruk. This ancient city, one of the first great urban centers in human history, flourished over 6,000 years ago in what we now call Iraq. Its streets, once bustling with traders, priests, farmers, and artisans, are long silent, yet they left behind echoes in clay, stone, and alabaster that continue to speak to us across millennia. Among these relics, one artifact stands as a testament to artistry, ritual, and the very beginnings of civilization: the Uruk vase. The Uruk vase, sometimes called the Warka vase, is a remarkable object carved from a single block of alabaster. Standing nearly 1 meter tall, it is a cylindrical vessel, its surface adorned with intricate relief carvings arranged in horizontal registers, each layer telling a story of abundance, worship, and the harmony between humans and the divine. The vase is not merely a container, it is a narrative in stone, a visual chronicle of religious and social life in early Sumer. Uruk itself was a city of firsts. It was one of the earliest examples of urban planning, monumental architecture, and social stratification. The city boasted massive temple complexes, including the famed Anu ziggurat, dedicated to the sky god Anu. It was a city where kingship, priesthood, trade, and art converged. Within this context, the Uruk vase was created, not as a utilitarian object, but as a ceremonial piece, deeply embedded in ritual practice and social symbolism. The carvings on the vase are organized into 3 distinct registers. At the base we see a procession of offerings, including jars of grain, bundles of reeds, and livestock. These images represent abundance and the wealth of the land, a tangible manifestation of fertility and sustenance. Each figure is rendered with careful attention to posture and proportion, conveying both movement and purpose. The people depicted carry their offerings with solemnity, their gestures precise, suggesting the disciplined rituals of the temple and the devotion of the community. Above this register, a scene of celebration and ritual unfolds. Figures of men and women approach the central figure, the goddess Inanna, the patron deity of Uruk. Inanna is depicted larger than the human participants, a visual cue of her divine status. She stands on a pedestal, her presence commanding yet serene, receiving the tribute from her devotees. The relief captures a moment in time, hands outstretched, bodies leaning forward, eyes directed upward. It is a snapshot of devotion, frozen in alabaster, that conveys the intersection of human labor, spiritual aspiration, and cosmic order. The top register of the vase depicts the sacred marriage ritual, or hieros gamos, a ceremony central to Sumerian religious practice. In this depiction, the goddess Inanna is joined by the high priest or king, symbolizing the union of heaven and earth, divine favor, and the fertility of the land. This event was more than symbolic. It reinforced the legitimacy of rulers, ensured agricultural prosperity, and affirmed the spiritual foundation of social hierarchy. The imagery captures the ritual's solemnity, its choreography, and its profound significance, translating a complex ceremonial practice into enduring visual form. Creating the Uruk vase required extraordinary skill. Alabaster is a soft stone, yet carving its surface with such precision demanded patience, sharp tools, and a careful hand. The artisans likely used flint, copper, or bronze implements to incise the relief, gradually revealing the layers of narrative as they worked. The process was as much spiritual as technical. Each incision, each contour, was a deliberate act of devotion. The artisans were not mere craftsmen, but participants in ritual, transforming raw stone into a vessel that could embody the presence of gods and the structure of society itself. Consider the scene of offerings at the base. Livestock are rendered with attention to anatomy and posture. Grain jars appear full and rounded, and humans move in harmony with their task. Even in this mundane activity, there is a sense of rhythm, a choreography that reflects the Sumerians' awareness of order, balance, and the sacred dimensions of labor. Each relief invites the viewer to witness the devotion of ordinary people, to feel the weight of their offerings, and to recognize the delicate interplay between human effort and divine favor. The Uruk vase also offers insight into the hierarchy of Sumerian society. The differentiation in size, posture, and placement indicates status. Divine figures are larger, more central, and elevated. Humans are smaller, often shown in profile, engaged in specific tasks. This visual language communicates authority, devotion, and social organization. The vase thus functions as both religious object and social text, encoding cultural norms, values, and beliefs into a portable yet monumental artifact. The vessel itself was likely used in temple rituals, perhaps for libations, or as a ceremonial centerpiece during festivals. Its design suggests that it was meant to be seen, admired, and understood by the participants in these ceremonies. The imagery reinforced the connection between ruler, priest, and deity, and reminded the community that prosperity, order, and divine favor were inseparable. In this way, the vase was not a passive object, but an active participant in the spiritual life of Uruk. Every detail on the vase carries meaning. The posture of each figure, the tilt of a head, the curve of a body, the arrangement of offerings, all are deliberate. Scholars have noted that even minor variations in gesture may signal different roles, levels of devotion, or ritual functions. The procession is not merely decorative, it is narrative, a visual language that conveys story, hierarchy, and the passage of time. In alabaster, these stories endure, speaking across millennia to those willing to observe closely. The Uruk vase also illustrates the Sumerians' understanding of symbolism and abstraction. While figures are stylized, their essential qualities are preserved. The strength of the farmer, the reverence of the devotee, the majesty of the goddess. Each layer of relief moves the viewer from earth to temple to divinity, guiding the eye and mind along a spiritual journey. The arrangement emphasizes continuity and order, reflecting the Sumerians' belief in cosmic balance, the cyclical nature of time, and the centrality of ritual in maintaining both social and spiritual equilibrium. It is remarkable to imagine the context in which the vase was created. Uruk's temples would have been alive with incense, music, and the quiet murmur of prayer. Priests and officials oversaw ritual preparation. Farmers and artisans contributed offerings, and artisans carved the vase with meticulous care. Each act was imbued with significance, a reflection of the interdependence of labor, devotion, and authority. The vase encapsulates this synergy, translating complex social and spiritual dynamics into a medium that survives long after the voices and hands of its makers have vanished. Even the alabaster itself tells a story. Quarried from distant sources, the stone required transport, shaping, and careful handling. Its smooth, pale surface was chosen not only for durability, but for its luminous quality, reflecting light and enhancing the visual impact of the relief. The choice of material underscores the value placed on the vase. It was not casual, it was sacred, and it was intended to endure. In this, the Uruk vase embodies the Sumerians' capacity to combine function, symbolism, and aesthetics into a coherent and resonant work of art. The depiction of Inanna, central to the upper register, conveys more than divine presence. Her headdress, garments, and posture are deliberate, reflecting iconographic conventions that communicate her power, fertility, and protective qualities. Inanna's prominence on the vase reinforces the centrality of goddess worship in Sumerian spirituality and highlights the intertwining of female divinity with the political and agricultural prosperity of Uruk. The high priest or king's proximity in the sacred marriage ritual further emphasizes the integration of human and divine authority, illustrating the societal belief that rulers derived legitimacy from their alignment with cosmic order. Scholars have long studied the Uruk vase, not only for its artistry but for the insight it provides into early writing, ritual, and social organization. The combination of imagery and hieroglyphic markings represents a proto-historical record, documenting events, ceremonies, and relationships in a medium that bridges prehistory and history. It offers a window into the cognitive and cultural world of the Sumerians, revealing how early urban societies conceptualized time, hierarchy, and the sacred. The procession of offerings at the base of the vase conveys a rhythm, a choreography, and a sense of continuity. Each figure, each jar, each animal contributes to a tableau of interdependence. The prosperity of the city relies on the labor of many, while the favor of the gods ensures that effort bears fruit. Even without written explanation, the vase communicates these dynamics visually, a testament to the power of art as a vehicle for complex social and spiritual information. Time itself seems embedded in the vase. The horizontal registers create a narrative flow, guiding the viewer from the earthbound activities of humans, through ritual interaction, to the divine culmination of the sacred marriage. In this way, the vase embodies a cosmology. Human endeavor, ritual acknowledgement, and divine sanction are linked in an eternal cycle. The reliefs are a visual map of society, spirituality, and morality, encoded in alabaster for eternity. Even today, when viewed in museum halls far from Uruk, the vase maintains a quiet presence. Its surface, though weathered, reflects light in a way that draws the eye along its reliefs, inviting contemplation, reflection, and connection. Scholars, visitors, and artists alike are drawn to its rhythm, its detail, and its enduring narrative. It is a bridge across time, a connection to people who lived, worked, prayed, and celebrated in a world both foreign and familiar. Imagine the hands that carved it. Young artisans trained in workshops, guided by master carvers, chipping, smoothing, and polishing alabaster, translating ritual knowledge into physical form. They understood that each curve, each figure, each line carried meaning beyond the aesthetic. It was the embodiment of belief, devotion, and social structure. In this, the Uruk vase is more than art. It is a living document, a tangible manifestation of culture, memory, and human aspiration. The Uruk vase also reflects the relationship between humans and nature. The procession of offerings, grains, animals, and plants underscores the Sumerians' dependence on agriculture, animal husbandry, and the cycles of fertility. These images serve as a reminder that prosperity and survival were inseparable from spiritual observance, that humans and deities existed in a mutual relationship mediated by ritual, care, and attention. The vase captures this interplay, creating a symbolic ecosystem in stone where human labor and divine will converge. In contemplating the Uruk vase, one also glimpses the birth of urban civilization. Uruk was a place where population density, monumental architecture, ritual practice, and administrative control intersected to create one of the first cities in human history. The vase stands as a testament to these achievements, encapsulating political, social, and religious structures in a single, elegant form. It is a reminder that even in the earliest cities, art and ritual were inseparable from governance, economy, and community identity. The spatial composition of the reliefs reinforces hierarchy, narrative, and cosmic order. Figures at the base represent labor and offering, those in the middle convey participation and devotion, and the upper register conveys divine sanction and unity. This vertical organization mirrors the perceived structure of the world, earth, society, and heaven, layered and interconnected, each dependent on the other for balance and continuity. Even the smallest elements, the posture of a hand, the tilt of a jar, the curve of a garment, convey intention. The artisans of Uruk understood how to encode complex ideas in minimal gestures, using abstraction, proportion, and repetition to create a language of visual communication. The vase is thus both a record and a guide, a teaching tool, a ritual object, and a work of art. Through all these layers, social, religious, artistic, the Uruk vase endures. It is more than alabaster. It is memory made tangible, a conduit for understanding the rhythms, beliefs, and aspirations of one of humanity's earliest civilizations. To gaze upon it is to peer into a world of devotion, hierarchy, and imagination, to sense the hands, minds, and hearts that shaped not only stone but the very fabric of early society. Even now, when scholars study its reliefs, when visitors admire its detail, the vase continues to function as it was intended, a bridge between human and divine, between labor and ritual, between past and present. Its silent narrative persists, a testament to the enduring power of artistry, devotion, and memory. In the quiet contemplation of the Uruk vase, one can almost hear the murmurs of ancient priests, the footsteps of processions, the rustle of garments, and the rhythmic pulse of life in one of the world's earliest cities. Its presence reminds us that human beings have always sought to record, to honor, to connect, through stone, through story, and through objects that carry meaning across millennia. The alabaster glows softly, reflecting light in ways that animate its reliefs. The procession continues in one's mind. The farmers bearing grain, the shepherds leading animals, the priests arranging offerings, and finally the goddess Inanna receiving homage, her gaze steady, her posture commanding. Each element is a thread in a tapestry of civilization, woven in stone, preserved for generations, waiting for eyes willing to see, hands willing to trace, minds willing to imagine. And so the Uruk vase stands, silent yet eloquent, a witness to the birth of cities, the codification of ritual, and the enduring human desire to commemorate, to communicate, and to bridge the ephemeral and the eternal. It is a monument not just to Sumerian skill, but to the universal human impulse to create meaning, to enshrine belief, and to leave behind a trace that whispers across the centuries, softly, persistently, endlessly. The Dacian Draco Standard. In the shadowed valleys of the Carpathian Mountains, where mist clings to cliffs and rivers wind through ancient forests, there once rose a fierce and proud people, the Dacians. Their lands, what is now modern Romania, were defined by rugged hills, dense woods, and the whispers of history carried on mountain winds. The Dacians were warriors, shepherds, and craftsmen, their lives entwined with the rhythms of the seasons, the forests, and the calls of distant birds of prey. Among the many symbols that marked their culture, one stands out in both mystery and artistry: the Dacian Draco Standard, a military banner that fluttered above warriors, announcing their presence, instilling fear in enemies, and embodying the identity of a people. The Draco was more than a flag, it was a living emblem, shaped like a dragon or serpent. Its head was crafted from metal, often bronze, and the body was formed from cloth or leather, hollowed so that wind rushing through it created a distinctive haunting sound. This wind-whistling effect transformed the Draco from mere decoration into an instrument of psychological warfare. When mounted on a spear or staff, carried at the head of a column of warriors, it appeared to writhe and hiss, giving the impression of a mythical beast come to life. Armies facing the Dacians would hear the chilling whistling cry before they saw the human force behind it, a warning that something powerful and untamed had arrived. The Dacians were acutely aware of the symbolism of their standard. The dragon or serpent represented strength, vigilance, and protection, drawing on centuries of myth and legend. It was said that the Draco embodied the spirit of the tribe, the guardian of warriors, and a conduit for divine favor in battle. Its presence on the battlefield was not merely decorative but deeply spiritual. Warriors believed that the dragon watched over them, instilling courage, inspiring unity, and marking them as part of a lineage that stretched back to the earliest ancestors of the Dacian people. Historical accounts suggest that the Draco's design was intentional in its impact. The head, carved with fierce teeth, bulging eyes, and a coiled tongue, was an image of aggression and alertness. The fabric body, hollowed and elongated, became animated when caught by the wind, writhing as though alive. Some depictions suggest scales or segmented patterns, adding texture and visual complexity. This combination of sight, sound, and motion made the Draco a formidable emblem. It was heard, seen, and felt, a multi-sensory instrument of intimidation and identity. The use of the Draco was closely tied to Dacian military organization. Warriors were arranged in units that valued cohesion, courage, and tactical awareness. The standard was more than a rallying point, it was a symbol of discipline and presence. Its movement could signal maneuvers, mark positions, or inspire fear. Roman accounts, particularly from campaigns under emperors like Trajan, mention the distinctive appearance and effect of the Draco, noting its combination of artistry, craftsmanship, and battlefield utility. The standard communicated, without words, the pride and ferocity of the Dacian people. Creating a Draco required skill, materials, and an understanding of both aesthetic and practical concerns. The head, usually metal, demanded precise casting or hammering techniques. Artisans had to capture the aggressive features of a mythical creature while ensuring structural integrity. The body, crafted from cloth, leather, or even silk in rare instances, needed to be lightweight yet durable, hollow enough to produce the wind-whistling effect without tearing in strong gusts or battle conditions. Every Draco was a unique creation, balancing artistry, utility, and symbolic meaning. The symbolism extended beyond warfare. The Draco also represented the unity of Dacian society and the continuity of tradition. In moments of peace, the standard may have been displayed during ceremonies, parades, or religious observances. It marked the presence of the tribe, the authority of leaders, and the connection to ancestors and deities. The serpent dragon was more than fearsome, it was protective, a guardian watching over the people, reinforcing social cohesion, and linking the present with the past. Consider the effect on a battlefield. A Roman legion advancing through a valley or over a ridge would suddenly perceive movement at the front lines. A figure holding a spear with a writhing, hissing dragon. The head glinted in sunlight, the elongated body twisting with the wind, and the sound, eerie, whistling, otherworldly, cut through the roar of combat. For a moment, reality and myth seemed to merge. The Draco was more than emblem, it was performance, psychology, and divine symbolism rolled into one. The cultural resonance of the Draco is profound. Dragons and serpents feature prominently in the myths and spiritual life of the Dacians. They were seen as liminal creatures, bridging worlds, earth and sky, human and divine, life and death. The standard embodied these beliefs, taking a mythic form and projecting it into the material world. Carried by warriors, it became both talisman and symbol, a declaration of identity and power that transcended the individual bearer. Roman records, especially from Trajan's campaigns in the early 2nd century CE, give glimpses of how the Draco was perceived externally. Roman soldiers marveled at the standard, noting its design and the psychological impact on enemy forces. Some described the noise as terrifying, the appearance as otherworldly. The Romans, meticulous in documenting foreign customs, recognized the Draco as both a military and symbolic tool, a fusion of craft, ritual, and martial purpose that communicated the spirit of the Dacians without a single spoken word. Archaeological evidence, although scarce due to the perishable nature of fabric components, supports these descriptions. Metal heads and fragments have been found in Dacian fortresses and ceremonial sites, showing the sophistication of casting and metalworking techniques. The heads often feature intricate detailing, combining stylized realism with symbolic exaggeration, bulging eyes, open mouths, coiled tongues, and scale patterns that convey both motion and menace. The surviving examples provide insight into the technical skill and aesthetic sensibilities of the Dacian craftsmen. The Dacian Draco was more than military technology, it was a vessel for memory and identity. Generations of warriors would see the standard carried by their forebears, reinforcing a sense of lineage, continuity, and belonging. The dragon's gaze, fixed in bronze, served as a reminder of the ancestors' strength and vigilance. Its hiss, carried on the wind, echoed the voices of those who had come before, a constant link between past and present, life and legend. Even beyond the battlefield, the Draco shaped perception. Its appearance in ceremonial contexts, atop fortresses or in processions, was a visible affirmation of authority and cohesion. Leaders used the standard to assert their legitimacy, communicate with distant allies or subjects, and remind both friend and foe of the unity and resilience of the Dacian people. It was a medium of both communication and symbolism, a silent yet potent statement of cultural identity. The construction process also reveals the intersection of artistry and ritual. Craftsmen worked with precision, understanding the symbolic weight of their creations. The metal head was cast or hammered with care, ensuring that the teeth, eyes, and scales conveyed the intended expression. The hollow body was sewn or assembled to optimize the sound produced by wind. Even the colors used, often red, black, or other vivid pigments, were chosen for visual impact, spiritual significance, and psychological effect. Every element of the Draco was intentional, a reflection of a society that intertwined art, craft, and belief. In considering the role of the Draco, one also glimpses the Dacian worldview. Their mythology, spirituality, and social structure emphasize the interconnection of human, natural, and supernatural forces. Dragons and serpents were liminal, mediators between realms, protectors of thresholds, and emblems of power. The standard made these beliefs tangible, projecting them into the visible, auditory, and psychological space of the community. It was a conduit through which myth, ritual, and martial practice converged. The Draco's impact on morale and perception cannot be understated. In moments of battle, the appearance of the writhing dragon could embolden allies, instilling courage and reinforcing unity. Conversely, its hiss and movement could unsettle opponents, creating hesitation, fear, or awe. The standard was a form of psychological strategy, a silent but powerful instrument that communicated intent, identity, and mythic presence all at once. The enduring fascination with the Draco lies not only in its functionality but in its symbolism. It embodies the creativity, spirituality, and martial skill of the Dacians, capturing in a single object the essence of a culture that was both sophisticated and fierce. Its design communicates layers of meaning: the relationship between human and divine, the continuity of lineage, the integration of artistry and warfare, and the profound awareness of perception, both within the community and to outsiders. Even today, when scholars study fragments, reconstructions, and Roman accounts, the Draco continues to evoke wonder. It is a bridge between imagination and reality, past and present. Through its bronze head, writhing body, and wind-whistling voice, it offers insight into the psyche of a people who valued courage, unity, and ritual expression. It reveals a society attuned to both the tangible and the symbolic, where craftsmanship, belief, and strategy merged seamlessly. The Dacian Draco also invites reflection on the role of symbols in human society. It reminds us that identity, authority, and belief are often communicated visually and orally, through objects that carry layers of meaning beyond their immediate appearance. The standard is a testament to the capacity of human beings to encode culture, spirituality, and power into tangible, enduring forms. In the quiet contemplation of the Draco, one can almost hear the rush of wind through its hollow body, the hiss echoing across valleys, the murmur of warriors marching in disciplined formation. One can imagine the glint of bronze under sunlight, the flicker of colored fabric, the weight of history carried atop spears and banners. The standard embodies both fear and inspiration, danger and protection, artistry and ritual. Even as centuries passed, through Roman conquest and the eventual assimilation of Dacian lands, the Draco remained a symbol of resilience. It is a reminder that cultural identity is not only preserved in texts or ruins, but also in symbols, in forms that convey meaning across generations. The Dacian Draco continues to speak, silently yet powerfully, connecting us to a world of mountains, forests, warriors, and myth, where human ingenuity met spiritual imagination, and where a dragon could fly on the wind, bridging past and present. The tomb of Marquis Yi Chariot, Suliaror. In the rolling hills of Hubei province, in the heart of central China, lies a tomb that speaks across millennia, whispering stories of power, ceremony, and the delicate artistry of an ancient civilization. This is the tomb of Marquis Yi of Zheng, a nobleman of the late spring and autumn period, who lived more than 2,400 years ago. When the tomb was unearthed in the 1970s, it revealed a world both familiar and extraordinary. A courtly life frozen in time, preserved in bronze, lacquer, and timber, and at its center, the majestic bronze chariot that has captivated scholars, historians, and visitors alike. Marquis Yi's tomb was no ordinary burial. It was an elaborate underground palace, carefully planned to honor the deceased, ensure his journey into the afterlife, and display the wealth and sophistication of the Zheng state. The tomb's chambers were meticulously organized, a reflection of both social hierarchy and cosmological order. Each artifact, from lacquered musical instruments to ritual vessels, from ceremonial weapons to the bronze chariot itself, served a purpose beyond mere display. They were instruments of ritual, symbols of authority, and tools to accompany the Marquis into eternity. The bronze chariot, discovered near the Marquis's burial site, is one of the most striking elements of the tomb. Crafted with incredible precision, it is a testament to the technical skill, artistic vision, and metallurgical knowledge of early Chinese artisans. Unlike practical vehicles designed for everyday transport, this chariot was ceremonial, a symbol of power, mobility, and status. Every detail, from the wheels to the axle, from the framework to the decorative fittings, was carefully considered. The chariot exemplifies the intersection of utility and artistry, reflecting a society where technological prowess and ritual significance were inseparable. The chariot's wheels, perfectly proportioned and reinforced, hint at the engineering sophistication of the period. Bronze fittings secure the wooden spokes, which in turn hold the carefully carved rims. The body of the chariot is adorned with intricate bronze ornaments, often depicting mythical beasts, dragons, and geometric patterns, each imbued with symbolic meaning. These decorations are not merely aesthetic, they convey protection, status, and spiritual resonance. The chariot, in essence, was both vehicle and talisman, carrying the marquis through the earthly realm and guiding him safely into the afterlife. The tomb itself reveals the opulence and complexity of Marquis's life. Its central chamber contained his sarcophagus, surrounded by a vast collection of grave goods. Over 70 bronze bells, each tuned to produce a specific note, formed a complete musical ensemble. These bells, known as bianzhong, were hung in intricate frames and are among the most important surviving examples of ancient Chinese musical technology. Their presence in the tomb suggests that music was an essential part of court life, ritual practice, and spiritual observance. Every artifact within the tomb speaks of hierarchy, ritual, and the careful orchestration of life and death. Lacquered containers held food and drink, ensuring the marquis's sustenance in the afterlife. Weapons of bronze, exquisitely crafted, signified martial prowess and protection. The arrangement of objects was deliberate. Each placement reflected societal order, spiritual belief, and the balance between earthly and celestial realms. The tomb functioned not only as a final resting place, but as a microcosm of courtly existence, a world suspended beneath the soil, waiting to be discovered. The chariot's role within this world is central. It embodies mobility, authority, and the symbolic journey of the marquis. While he may never have ridden this specific chariot in life, it represents the ideal of power, the projection of status, and the ritual necessity of accompaniment into death. Bronze, a material that requires immense heat, skill, and precision, was chosen deliberately for its durability and prestige. In the hands of ancient artisans, molten bronze became a medium to eternalize authority, create protective symbolism, and express cultural values. Examining the chariot more closely, one notes the detailed depictions of dragons along its side panels. In Chinese symbolism, dragons are creatures of power, vigilance, and cosmic significance. They represent protection and the capacity to transcend the ordinary. By incorporating these motifs, the artisans ensured that the marquis's chariot was not merely a vehicle, but a spiritual safeguard, a protective companion for his journey into the unknown. The craftsmanship extends to the harnesses and fittings designed to accommodate horses. Though small in scale compared to later Chinese chariots, these bronze and wooden components demonstrate knowledge of geometry, balance, and weight distribution. Horses were not simply animals of labor, they were extensions of power, status, and spiritual connection. The pairing of chariot and horse creates a tableau of controlled motion, a microcosm of authority on earth, and a guide through the spiritual realm. The discovery of the tomb revealed the remarkable preservation of organic and inorganic materials alike. Timber from the chariot, carefully lacquered and reinforced, survived in the damp soil. Bronze, resistant to corrosion, retains its intricate patterns and inscriptions. This combination of materials shows an early mastery of preservation, design, and symbolic communication. Every aspect of the chariot was designed with the afterlife in mind, ensuring that the marquis's passage would be secure, dignified, and impressive. Music and ritual in the tomb cannot be overstated. The bianzhong bells, when struck in sequence, produce scales that allow for complete compositions. Scholars have reconstructed these melodies, revealing that ancient Chinese music was as mathematically sophisticated as it was spiritually significant. The chariot's placement in proximity to these bells suggests that it may have played a role in processional or ceremonial performance, where movement and sound converged in an expression of cosmic order. The tomb also offers insight into the life of Marquis Yi himself. He was a ruler of influence, living at a time when the Zheng state interacted with neighboring polities, negotiating power, culture, and ritual. His burial reflects both personal achievement and societal expectation. The bronze chariot is an assertion of authority, a marker of rank, and a vehicle for memory. In its silent presence, it conveys the weight of governance, the artistry of court life, and the spiritual beliefs that defined this period of Chinese history. Even the soil that covered the tomb tells a story. Layers of earth, carefully compacted, protected its treasures from decay and looting for centuries. When excavated, archaeologists marveled at the intact arrangement, the symmetry of objects, and the preserved lacquer and bronze. The chariot emerged not just as an artifact, but as a window into a fully realized world, where ritual, art, power, and belief coexisted in harmony. The bronze chariot also reflects technological innovation, casting large components, joining them precisely, and incorporating decorative motifs required an advanced understanding of metallurgy and design. This sophistication demonstrates that the people of the Zheng state had achieved mastery over their materials, combining practicality with aesthetic and spiritual considerations. It is a rare convergence of craft, technology, and ritual intention. In contemplating the chariot, one imagines the artisans at work, pouring molten bronze, hammering details, and polishing surfaces. Each dragon, each wheel, each hinge was an act of devotion, a contribution to the Marquise's eternal presence. These craftsmen were not merely laborers, they were spiritual intermediaries, ensuring that the object would serve both in life and after death, in ceremony and in memory. The tomb's broader context reveals the worldview of the time. Life and death were intertwined, earthly power was inseparable from spiritual legitimacy, and art served as a bridge between the visible and invisible. The bronze chariot is a physical manifestation of these beliefs, linking the Marquis to his ancestors, his state, and the cosmic order. In its intricate design, one sees not just the hand of the artisan, but the thought, ritual, and ideology of an entire civilization. The chariot's discovery has transformed our understanding of early Chinese ritual and technology. Its preservation allows modern audiences to appreciate the scale, skill, and sophistication of ancient society. It demonstrates that concepts of authority, mobility, and symbolism were as central 2,000 years ago as they would be in later dynasties. It also reminds us that objects, when crafted with intention, can endure far beyond the life of their makers, carrying meaning across centuries. The tomb of Marquis Yi, with its bronze chariot at the center, continues to inspire awe. It is a monument to ingenuity, devotion, and cultural sophistication. Each curve of bronze, each wheel, each engraved dragon is a narrative of power, ritual, and the pursuit of immortality through artistry. Through the chariot, the Marquise's presence persists, connecting past and present, life and afterlife, humanity and the divine. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history's hidden treasures. We hope these stories sparked your curiosity and wonder. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video to explore more mysteries. Share your thoughts and tell us where you're watching from.